Hey everyone, welcome back to part 18 of my Create Mod series. Now today I'm going to go over everything from blaze cakes to chromatic compounds to how do you even get shadow steel and how do you get refined radiance, and then I'm going to go over everything you can craft with those materials. So there's going to be a lot inside this video. If there's anything you don't care about, I've included timestamps throughout this entire video, so just skip over a section if you really don't care about it. But anyways, the very first thing that we are going to talk about is Cinder Flour. Now, Cinder Flour is an ingredient for the blaze cake base that allows us to make a blaze cake, which the blaze cake is used in the crafting recipe of the chromatic compound, so it kind of all builds on itself. So the blaze cake base is an egg, a piece of sugar, and a piece of cinder flour inside a mechanical press being pressed into a basin. And then cinder flour is if you take netherrack and put it in crushing wheels, and it creates cinder flour with a percent to create more than one cinder flour. So let's simply grab our netherrack, we'll throw it in our crushing wheels, and it will get crushed right into cinder flour. So throw this guy back in here. And now let's move to our next step, which is our blaze cake base. Now, our blaze cake base, of course, we have our setup with a mechanical press that's powered with a creative motor and a basin. So let's go ahead and grab our cinder flour, our sugar, and our egg, and we'll throw all three ingredients right on in here. It's going to come down, it's going to press it, and it's going to press right into our blaze cake base. So now we're ready to craft the blaze cake. Now, right here we have a fluid setup, which is a fluid tank filled with lava that's being pumped with a mechanical pump and placed into a spout. In other words, you need lava inside of the spout, so this is the setup that I currently have. And of course, it's powered by our creative motor and our small cogwheel. Now, if you've never used fluids before, I recommend you check out my fluid video that just got linked on the screen right about now, because it'll kind of give you more of an understanding of how this system works. But in order to craft this, you're simply going to have a depot underneath the spout, or it can technically also be a belt as well. Place your blaze cake base underneath, and it turns into a blaze cake. That easy. So we have now crafted our blaze cake, but our next thing that we need to work on is our chromatic compound, which if we look in, this is a blaze burner, and our blaze cake, which turns into a superheated blaze burner, and 3 glowstone, 3 powdered obsidian, and a polished rose quartz. Polished rose quartz we've of course gone over in the past, and the glowstone dust is just a generic Minecraft thing, but powdered obsidian is simply taking a piece of obsidian and throwing it inside of a crushing wheel, and then it has a 75% chance of actually giving you the obsidian as well. So I'll just show you for one really quick, is you're simply putting the obsidian inside of the crushing wheels, and then you can see it has a chance to continue to turn the obsidian out over and over. Well, there you go, it ended up breaking, but you're going to end up needing 3 of these. Alright, so we finally moved over to the chromatic compound area. So for chromatic compounds, we have a nice little mixer that's of course being spun by a creative motor. We have our basin, and we have our blaze burner. Now, if you've never done a blaze burner or anything like this, I will have another video pop up on the screen that'll talk you through this whole entire setup. But chromatic compound, we got our 3 powdered obsidian, 3 glowstone dust, rose quartz, and we have our blaze cake. First thing we're going to do is right click our blaze cake onto the blaze burner so he turns into a blue color. And then now we're going to throw our rose quartz, our glowstone dust, and our obsidian in here. And then our mixer will go ahead and mix it, and it turns into a chromatic compound. So there you go. We've now finally got our chromatic compound, which is semi-useless at the moment until we do a couple things with it. So you've probably realized if you're checking out this video that we have our chromatic compounds, but we also have 2 recipes in here, the Shadow Steel and the Refined Radiance. And if you click on these recipes, or let's just right click on the chromatic compound, you can see that there's just question marks on how to convert these guys because it's not like a crafting recipe. Now, Shadow Steel says it's a material forged in the void, and Refined Radiance says that it's absorbed in, or forged from absorbed light. Now, if you don't know what that means, the first thing is actually a beacon that's lit. Now, I've just placed down 9 blocks of iron. Of course, these can be diamond, gold, whatever. You just need your beacon lit, and you don't even have to place any item in here to actually power it up. You just need the beacon up in the air. Now, if you take chromatic compound, you're going to want to build kind of like a ceiling to this, preferably glass, so that the beacon is still lit. And then you're going to want to build somewhat of like a wall, and then you're going to throw your chromatic compound through it, and you're going to see it'll actually float and turn into refined radiance. Now, you can also do this by throwing several of these guys at once. So we'll throw 7 of them, and you can see it turns all 7 immediately into refined radiance. So once you have chromatic compound, it's as simple as that. Now let's move on to the next one. You're probably wondering on how to do this one as well. Now this is Shadow Steel. Now Shadow Steel is throwing your chromatic compound into the void. Now I'm in a creative world, so I've just broken through bedrock. Of course, in a normal mod pack, it's going to be pretty difficult to be able to pull that off. So you're going to want to go to the end, and then in the end, you can throw it off into the void, and this is the way it works. So I've also built a ceiling above this. This is going to help you out. You're going to want to go to the edge, of course, holding shift, and drop one chromatic compound. You're going to see it get like a bunch of particle effects, and it will come straight back up to you. The one thing you don't want to do is kind of throw it with motion, as it's going to get kind of like a trajectory, and it can get caught. You can see it almost got caught underneath, and then it'll be stuck. You can see, though, I have also built a ceiling because this will help me be able to grab my Shadow Steel. So I've set myself to survival mode so I can showcase all these different tools that we can use. But the very first thing I want to talk about is the Deforester. Now, the Deforester is of course going to be like tree feller that is going to take the entire tree out for us. There's actually a way to do this very early on in the game with a hand crank and a saw. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out the tips video that just popped up on the screen now. But this is a very late game version that's actually a tiny bit better than that. So the Deforester is crafted with 2 Obsidian, 2 Refined Radiance, and a cogwheel. And that turns into our Deforester. And then if we break the bottom of a tree, it takes the entire tree out for us. It gives us the logs, the saplings, the apples, everything for us. Now, let's throw these items really quick back in here. With this Deforester, you can also enchant it. And you can enchant it with all of the regular enchantments that would go on an axe. Now, you're probably wondering, what's the point of enchanting this? Why don't I just make a diamond axe, or why don't I just use the hand crank? If we look at a diamond axe, it does 9 attack damage with 1 attack speed. If we look at a Deforester, it does 0.9 attack speed, so just slightly down, but it does an extra 0.5 attack damage. So technically, if you enchant this with sharpness, and especially like sharpness 5, it's starting to do 12.5 attack damage. That's insane for an axe. So that's something to think about. This can be even your main weapon to take out mobs, take out other players, and things along those lines. So the next thing we're going to go over is the Wand of Symmetry. So it's going to be 2 Refined Radiance, 2 White Stained Glass, 2 Brass Ingots, and an Obsidian block. So if we go ahead and click on the NEI system, you can see you just place it basically like a wand shape in a way, and it will turn into our Wand of Symmetry. So let's grab some blocks really quick. We'll just grab some white wool. And the way that this works is as we place down a mirror and we place a block, it will mirror our design on the other side. So let's go through the controls really quick. In order to place your mirror, you're going to right click on the ground or right click on a block, and it's going to mirror those blocks on either side. If you go ahead and right click in the air, it will remove your mirror. And if you shift right click, it will bring up all of these options. So you can see that right now we're on the mirror once section. So you can see that it mirrored one block on the other side, and that's it. And it mirrored along the x-axis. You can also change it by scrolling to change it to along the z-axis and so on. But you can also change it to shapes like rectangular, and then you can also do it by diagonal or by orthogonal, but we'll do rectangular. And let's go ahead and place our mirror down over here. You're going to see that it's now built more of a different shape of a mirror. And if we place a block like so, you can see that as I'm placing blocks, that it is actually making a rectangle. Very simply, by us only building 2 sides, it made a rectangle perfectly for us. So let's also go over octagonal. So octagonal kind of speaks for itself, kind of like the rectangle one. That if we place down our mirror, and then let's place down blocks, every time I place a block, it's placing down 8 other blocks for us as well. So you can see, you could fill large areas very quickly. You can also build towers insanely quickly. Now, something to kind of keep in mind with this Wand of Symmetry, and same as the Blockzapper that we're going to go over next, is if you're in creative mode, it's not going to use up your blocks. But if you are in survival mode, when you place down one of these blocks, it's also placing 8 other blocks from your inventory. So just keep that in mind. This isn't like infinite blocks or anything along those lines. So the next thing we're going to go over is the Blockzapper. Now, the Blockzapper is also a building tool, and it's made with 2 Obsidian, 1 Andesite alloy, and 1 Refined Radiance. Now, let's go ahead and craft this guy really quick. It's basically just a diagonal shape as well. Turns into our Handheld Blockzapper. But if you've been inside of the NEI system, you might notice that there are 3 different versions, and then there's a 4th version that's a creative mode only version called the World Shaper. Now, the World Shaper is basically a Blockzapper on steroids. I'm not going to go through with it because it's just a creative mode only tool. You can't even get this in survival, but it is basically just a Blockzapper on steroids. But basically, this Blockzapper that we have here can be upgraded to a brass version, so you can see that they have all brass modifications, and it can be upgraded to a chromatic version, which I'm going to do in this video as well, so definitely stay tuned for that. Now, this handheld Blockzapper alone, if I grab some blocks, let's go over some of the controls. So if we go ahead and hover over it and you hold shift, it's going to show you the modifications in a description, but if you hold control, it will go over all of the instructions on how to use this item. So if we place a block down and we want to use this as kind of our block that we have selected, you're going to left click on the block. It's going to make like a little ding noise. And now we have this nice little silhouette of where we can place blocks. So we're just going to right click and it will shoot our blocks onto the ground where we would need to place them. So let's go ahead and break these blocks. Let's say we place down several of these blocks or 7 different colors. If you go ahead and just left click, you can then change colors to whatever color you would like. Now, it's just like the Wand of Symmetry that these blocks inside of your inventory, if you're in survival mode, it's going to use them up. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, there's also some settings. If you shift right click, you can see there's actually a lot more settings than the Wand of Symmetry. Now, there are follow diagonals and ignore material borders and things along those lines that I'm going to cover in a moment. There's also replace mode. So if we enable that, you can see that, let's say we select orange and we want to change this green piece of wool to orange, we can right click and it will change it for us. Now, if we're in survival mode, the block is just going to drop onto the ground. So just kind of keep that in mind. But since we're in creative mode, it doesn't really care. You could even change the blocks on the ground here as well. Now, let's get out of replace mode. There's also spread range, which you can see it says it needs to be upgraded to amplifier, which we're going to cover in a moment. There's also solid checkerboard, inverted checkerboard. There's 75% roll, 50% roll, and 25% roll, but we're also going to cover that in a moment. Let's go ahead and start upgrading this thing. So now that we have our Blockzapper, there are 2 different ways you can upgrade this. There's the brass version and there's the chromatic version. Now, the brass version is basically just a not as powerful version as the chromatic version. I'm not going to craft both of them, but if you would like to do only brass, these are all of the materials you need to fully upgrade your weapon to be a brass version. And this bottom row is all the materials you need to upgrade to be a fully chromatic version. So just also keep that in mind. So let's grab all the chromatic compound versions and let's go through some of the crafting recipes. So if you right click in the NEI system on this handheld Blockzapper, it will now showcase all of the upgrades that you can place onto this Blockzapper. So let's do all of the pink ones, so the chromatic ones. The first thing is a scope. Now let's go through and craft this. So it's 2 pieces of glass and a chromatic compound. So we'll place him there, place our chromatic compound, place our 2 pieces of glass, and now if we hold shift, it now has a chromatic scope. Now the scope, as you can see when I was aiming where I wanted to place a block, there's actually a range on this thing. But now that we have a scope, we can place blocks insanely far away. You can see on how far away that we can shoot this thing. Now, a brass version would only be able to shoot probably like half this distance, but with a chromatic version, you could shoot crazy far away. So keep that in mind. So let's go to the next one. Let's go ahead and craft the Retriever. Now, the Retriever is going to be a handheld Blockzapper. It's going to be placed with a chromatic compound and an ender pearl, just like so, like an L shape. Now, the Retriever, as you remember when I said that when we were able to replace colors, so let's select white. If we go ahead, let's change this to replace mode. And if we start replacing these blocks, since we're in creative, it's not picking up these blocks for us. But let's go to survival mode. And let's go ahead and start changing this dirt to white wool. You can see in my inventory that it's now actually picking up those blocks and just placing them inside of my inventory as well. So this is super useful when you're building on the side of a house or something and you're just shooting blocks into place. It will just place them back into your inventory when you need to replace them. So the next one we're going to go over is called the Body. Now this one took me a moment to even figure out what it was. So if we take our Blockzapper and we place our chromatic compound around, this is now going to have a chromatic body. Now the body, what it does is it's just like a normal Minecraft tool. If you have an iron pickaxe, there's only so many things that you can break, versus if you get a diamond pickaxe, you now break obsidian. Think of it the same way. When we were able to replace blocks of wool, if we had, let's say, blocks of obsidian and things like that, we would be able to replace those. So just kind of think of it that way, that if you had a non-upgraded body, there's only so many blocks that you can replace. If you have a brass version, there's more blocks you can replace. And then after that, if you have the chromatic version, you can replace practically anything inside of this game. So the next thing is going to be a very fun one to go over. This is going to be our amplifier. So if we take our Blockzapper and we place it there, we take our Refined Radiance, place them just like that, and we take our Chromatic Compounds and place it there, we now have a chromatic amplifier. Now the amplifier is going to be super useful for what we were doing in the very beginning. So if we right click, you can see that we're placing single blocks right now, which is helpful but not super useful. So let's go ahead and shift right click. If we go into this spread range, you can actually up the spread. So right now, if we turn it to 7 meters, you can see on how many blocks that we are placing currently at one time. Again, this depends on how many blocks you have in your inventory on if you'd be able to do this. Now, let's go over a couple other things. Right now, we're on solid. Let's place down checkerboard. You can see it actually turns into a checkerboard. If we go to inverted checkerboard, it's basically the opposite of the checkerboard that we have done. So you can see where blocks would have been here are not here, and so on. If we click on 25% roll, this means every block has a 25% chance of being placed. So if we place it like this, you can see this would be perfect for building like paths and stuff like that. If we do 50% roll, it's just more blocks are going to be placed down, and 75% roll is going to be basically more blocks as well being placed down. So real quick, I think it's time to go over the ignore material borders thing really quick. So you can see I don't have it selected on right now, and I'm selected to orange wool. So no matter what I'm aiming at, it's only placing at things that are connected blocks. So if I don't care about this, I want this whole wall to be one block, I turn ignore material borders on, and it will place the entire wall for us. Now, let's look at this checkerboard. You can see that right now it's only wanting to place one block, even though I'm set on this. Now, a nice little way around this is if I click on follow diagonals and I go one block up, you can see that I can actually place blocks based on the diagonals that we have. So that's what the follow diagonals does. So there's one last thing to go over, and that is with our handheld Blockzapper to turn it into having the accelerator modification. So that is with 2 pieces of sugar and a chromatic compound. So let's go ahead and place that chromatic compound and our Blockzapper, and now we have our accelerator. So let's adjust this. Let's make this one block. As you remember, when we used to place, it would only place so many blocks and it was very slow. Now that we have the accelerator, you can basically rapid fire blocks as quickly as you would like. Super fast to be able to build things. Of course, right now I'm just placing wool everywhere. But basically it turns this into like a mini machine gun. You can even hold down right click and you can see it's just lighting up blocks everywhere. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please drop a like, please subscribe. I recommend you check out my Discord that's in the description. There's a bunch of cool people inside of the Create mod, and please subscribe if you really enjoy content. I'm making this video where I'm only at I think 1.9 thousand subs, so who knows if I'll be at 2K by the time I upload this. If so, thank you. If not, we're almost there. I don't even know what to announce anymore. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys all in the next one.